What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Vinylbeast channel. First off, thanks for all the love on episode 1. Honestly, I didn't know how many people were going to care about CDs in 2026, really. And so clearly a lot of you do, and that makes me happy. So because I've been sitting on a lot of the CD knowledge and stuff for a little while, and it's fun to share it. So before we jump into today's stack, I want to share with something I had posted in the comments section on the first YouTube video. And for anyone that missed it, it was a bonus disc, and it was Lindsey Buckingham's Out of the Cradle from 1992. And yeah, again, 1992. This disc is a great example, again, why I keep saying it's not about the format. Uh, the format is kind of like a container, a bucket for the mastering. And so this is a recording, man. And so this album has really clean guitar tone, excellent separation between the layers, a tight low end, a very studio real presentation. And what I love about it is it doesn't try to be like bright or loud or impressed like that. It's just balanced. It's got just a very good studio real presentation. And you can turn it up and it stays smooth. So if you want a fourth CD to hunt down from that first episode, there's one right there. And all right, let's get to this episode's list. And not all of these are going to be dollar bin finds, kind of like the first episode, but most of these should still be pretty cheap. I would think a Lincoln or a Hamilton at the most would buy all these. And maybe some of these you might find for $1. Who knows? The first disc, and one of the things I want to talk about on this episode is a little bit more in depth about mastering engineers. And so this first disc is a disc that I see in the bins. And it's one of those discs where specifically it was kind of part of a series or released over certain years. I don't know how long the series went on, but it is the Motown Compact Classics edition of Marvin Gaye's What's Going On. Like a lot of the Motown Compact Classics, this one was done by John Matousek. I'm not sure how you pronounce his name. So when I come across these Motown Compact Classics in the bins, I will look for his name on them because generally his have really good tone. The vocals sit right, the bass is full but controlled. The top end doesn't get edgy. They don't sound like somebody tried to modernize them. And again, though, not all of these are perfect. Not every Motown Compact Classic is a home run. But the great part is these discs are usually so cheap that when you find them, they're literally catch and release. You buy it, it's not your favorite. You're out $2, $3, $4. Put it back in the wild, toss it back in the stream. But when you land on a really good Matousek pressing or mastering of one of the compact classics, you found a good one because some of them really do sound great. This album in particular, it matters because the whole record is built around bass, groove, vocals, layers of instrumentation. It's one of those masterings that if it's too bright or too loud, you lose the whole vibe of the record, and this one keeps it intact. So I would definitely check out and find you a copy. Up next, Rickie Lee Jones, the self-titled original CD. Now, what's funny is the original vinyl of this album has been praised forever. Vinyl people have talked about it for years as a great sounding record or a demo record. But a little secret is the CD holds its own, this original one at least. And it's usually cheap and everywhere. And as far as I know, the original mastering was used for years from the first Target pressing through to at least the mid 90s or later. So there's a lot of these out in the wild. This is one of those albums that doesn't hit you like right with a wow by being loud and flashy, but it hits you because it's a real recording. If you want to know what one sounds like, this is it. Uh, what I listen for on this disc specifically is vocals that sound human. Her voice has texture. You hear her breath, phrasing, the shape of the words. It never turns brittle. The mid range is the star of the record. Piano, guitar, vocals, it all lives in that zone where bad CDs can sound flat, honky, shouty, and a good early pressing like this keeps it present without being aggressive. And you can follow the musicians on this album. And I guess what I mean is everything has its own lane. You can pick out drum hits, bass movement, little percussion details without everything smearing together. And so this album is in this disc is it's a sit and listen disc, I guess. It's a good let's put the lights on low, let's put our head on straight, let's put the system on, and let's kind of pay attention to this record. And you know, when you see one and they're cheap, just don't overthink it, just buy it. So Rickie Lee Jones, self-titled. All right. This next one is a totally different vibe. The Blue Nile Hats. If you've never heard this album, it's one of those records where you immediately understand why audiophiles talk about it. It's not about slam, it's about depth, space, atmosphere, emotion. This is one of those discs that you can just hear the production, like the way they built the sound, really. And what a good CD mastering does here is it keeps the album from collapsing into a flat wall. And what makes this great sonically is the center image is just locked and the vocals sit right there and just feel anchored in the center. And the background layers stay audible though. So like there are synth textures and ambient details behind everything. And on lesser versions of this album, they can get buried. Here on this early, just regular pressing, you can hear the layers. The album also has contrast. The quiet moments are quiet, louder moments expand. This is a great example of why CDs don't have to sound the same volume all the time, if that makes sense. This CD rewards good gear. If you've got speakers that image well, this disc will show you width and depth. If you've got good headphones, you'll hear micro details everywhere on it. And the crazy part, a lot of people don't even know about this album or haven't even heard of this band. And so sometimes you can find it in the cheap bins in certain stores. And so if you find it, grab it. Blue Nile Hats. And so now I kind of want to connect the dots a little bit because you can kind of collect CDs in different ways, like collect by the album title, the band, or you can collect CDs by the mastering. And so once you start to learn certain engineers' names, it becomes like not a cheat code, but like you can read the backs of albums and know some of the people. And so John Matousek, like we talked about, the Motown Compact Classics, he's one of the names. But another name you'll hear on a lot of early CDs and masterings is Barry Diament, Diament. And so one of the first ones I'll talk about of his masterings is the Grace Jones Island Life album. And it's a compilation, actually. And I want to say all the early masterings, this is one of the early Island digipacks. When Island, a bunch of their early albums, I have this as a digipack, Robert Palmer, Riptide as a digipack, some U2 as a digipack. And so certain early Island albums you will find like that. And so this is actually a Japanese for USA pressing in a digipack. And so I also have another, it's the same mastering, it's just a different release. It's early too as well. It doesn't have a UPC code on the back. And this is just a regular jewel case pressing. And in the Matrix, it says it's pressed at Nimbus. So it's pressed in the UK. But this album, you know, this isn't what most people think is audiophile demo music. This is I mean, masterings are masterings in my mind. And so what this disc has, though, is it doesn't feel processed. It has punch without being brittle. It has clarity without sounding thin. The grooves stay intact even when you crank it. It's the kind of CD that feels clean in the best way and like nothing is fighting you. And so I highly recommend, if you find them cheap in the bins, grab a copy of Grace Jones' Island Life. Now, this next one is like a master class in vocals and how they should sound if you want them to sound correct. And this is just the regular early pressing of Anita Baker, Rapture. And so this is the kind of CD where the vocal tone is the whole story. You know, a lot of later albums, not necessarily this remaster, but just remasters a lot of times would try to make stuff sound detailed by boosting the top end. And you don't hear this at all ever in this recording. You hear body, you hear smoothness, you hear natural air without like it ever turning sharp. The rhythm section sits perfectly underneath it. This is a disc you can play for someone who thinks CDs are cold and sterile, and it will change their mind. So, yeah, this is usually in dollar bins I see sometimes. So this is one of the cheap ones you can find, guys. Anita Baker, Rapture. And so, kind of a bonus round here. One of the other things that Barry Diament is known for doing is all of the Bob Marley early pressings on CD. And so, if anything, I recommend just pick up one of the early legends that he did if you're not a super fan. They all say pretty much all of his masterings will say on the disc, remastered from the original tapes by Barry Diament. And like I said, at the least, grab this. But like, you can kind of go down a rabbit hole and like Pokemon style, like me, and catch them all. So like over the years, I've found pretty much most of them: Confrontation, Uprising, Survival, Kaya, Exodus, Rastaman Vibration, Live, Natty Dread, Burnin', and then to start them all off, Catch a Fire. There are other versions of these Marley CDs floating out there, so make sure when you grab them, most of them on the backs will say Barry Diamond's name, most of them will say on the disc. And so the key is they got to have his name on the credits, but once you do find them, you'll find the bass line is solid, the rhythm is relaxed in the recording, the mix is musical. And this is like, Marley is one of those artists where that matters because the music is built on rhythm, bass, space. That's fun to say. Rhythm, bass, space. And so if you squash that in reggae, you kill the feel. And so if you see any of these in the bins cheaper, I highly recommend picking them up. And so, yeah, guys, that's part 2. Buckingham Nicks was the follow-up. Motown Compact Classics, Rickie Lee Jones, Blue Nile, Barry Diament, Marley. So yeah, if you're enjoying the series, let me know. Put it in the comments. Let me know what cheap CDs you found that you think sound great. Oh, maybe I have them. We'll talk about them. So, all right. Thanks for watching, and I appreciate it. And I leave you with this: diamonds are forever. Vinylbeast out.